are talking about boundaries today. And this is such an important topic. So, firstly, what are boundaries? What are boundaries? Well, I like to think about our personal boundaries like a paddock with a fence. So, it's as if you have a fence around yourself and you're in this paddock, and that fence has gates. And those gates are, either opened or closed, and you get to choose who you want to let in. And you do that by either leaving the gate open or closing the gate. But because you've got these boundaries around you, you feel safe and held in this paddock or in this container. When we don't have the paddock or the container, because we've never consciously created our boundaries for ourselves and boundaries in our lives, then we can feel quite ungrounded, unsettled, and generally unsafe. And what will happen is that our nervous system will be constantly needing to defend. So it will be constantly on. Your nervous system will be constantly in fight, flight. And you'll probably be experiencing symptoms of that, such as anxiety. And so it's really important that you are understanding what your boundaries are and how to set them and why it's so important. Why do you need them? So the first thing is about safety. We want to create safety for ourselves, because when we create safety for ourselves, our body, sorry, I'm getting the sun coming in again. I'm going to look like a ghost in a minute, but hopefully the clouds will part and then, will roll in. So when we create safety for ourselves, our bodies and minds start to relax. They start to relax. And what that means is that your nervous system is relaxed. So you can be in your parasympathetic rest and digest system, which is where all of the feel-good hormones kick in rather than the stress hormones. And so that's when you don't experience anxiety and you don't get the stress on your body and on your mind, and you can actually manifest things in your life much, much faster when you are relaxed. Your life will start to become smoother and things will start to go your way. When your mind and body are in this parasympathetic nervous system most of your day, as opposed to you being stressed and anxious most of your day and in fight, flight in your sympathetic nervous system. So in order to create these boundaries, it's very important that you start to recognize what's okay and what's not. What's okay and what's not. So this is about what you say yes to and what you say no to. Now, if you've noticed that you have trouble saying no, then this would suggest that your boundaries are unclear or that they're not strong. And this can be due to a few reasons. And one of these reasons can be that we don't value ourselves enough to say no. That's one reason. Another reason is that we are scared to say no. And perhaps you've had some conditioning or past experiences where you've tried to say no or you've said no and you haven't been heard. And that can be then therefore reinforced that saying no is difficult and it's scary. And if I say no, then I'll rock the boat. And that can generate this level of fear, which again puts your body into, fight, flight, and your anxiety. And so saying no can be a very scary thing. However, if we don't ever practice speaking up and saying no to the things that don't feel right, the people that we don't want to let in the paddock, or the circumstances that we don't want to let into the paddock or into the container, the things that don't feel right, if we don't say no up front, then what happens is that those people come into the paddock. Those situations come into your life. They intrude into your energy field, into your safe container. And therefore, you no longer feel safe because you didn't say no and set the boundaries and be very clear about what works for you and what doesn't. Now, I say this as if, we all have this innate understanding of, what works and what doesn't, and what I should say yes to and what I should say no to. However, that can be difficult at times because there are conflicting messages between body and mind. And with the emotions as well, it can become very confusing. And so this is where meditation really comes into its own. Because when we meditate, we are turning our attention inward. You're turning your attention inward, and you're going through this journey with yourself, this process of self-discovery, because you are literally becoming attuned to your inner world. And your inner world is what is going to determine what's okay and what's not for you. But if you don't spend time with yourself, turning your attention inward rather than turning your attention outward, if your outward or your outer world is your dominant place of feedback, and that is where you're investing the majority of your time and energy and money for that matter, then it's going to be very hard for you to develop these internal boundaries and know what is okay and what's not, and when to speak up, when to say yes, when to say no, how to, really value yourself and respect yourself and love yourself, because you're simply not giving yourself that level of attention and you can't develop that level of self-understanding. So it's very important that you spend this time reflecting. That's why we do the journaling. And we spend the time meditating, because meditation is a process of self-inquiry. It is your time to disconnect from the outer world, connect to your inner world, which is really the most important. Your outer world will become a reflection of your inner world. You want your outer world to change, all you have to do is spend more time in your inner world. And then automatically, your outer world will start to transform, because what will happen is you start to make different choices. You start to firm up your boundaries. You start to attract different people into your life, different circumstances into your life. You make different choices. And through the law of attraction, which says that we attract where we're at, it's a magnetism, it's a vibration. So it's like for like energy. When you transform your energy, which is your inner world, by cultivating this time with yourself, by turning your attention inward, by down-regulating your nervous system, by getting yourself out of fight, flight, by calming down the mind and doing this level of internal investigation, getting internal feedback about how you're really feeling, what's really going on for you in any given moment, you're increasing your level of self-awareness. And when you do that, you're transforming your inner world, because you're starting to give yourself what it is that you're looking for in your outer world. And we are all seeking particular needs, and those needs are very common to everybody. We're seeking love and connection and validation and significance, and we want to feel a level of contribution. We need certainty. We need variety. There are things that are these human needs. And when you become aware of what it is that you really need, your basic core human needs, and you start to give them to yourself by recognizing, because you're doing this level of internal investigation all the time, reflecting, meditating, turning your attention inward, being as present as possible, not allowing your mind to wander into the past and future. You keep bringing it back to the present moment. This is why we do the meditation, to help you manage your outer world more effectively, not to become a better meditator. You do all these practices. That's why they're called practice. You practice. You do these practices to become more skillful. You become more skillful at managing your inner world. And when you become more skillful at managing your inner world, you become more skillful at managing your outer world. And then you start to notice that things start to transform. Because you have developed this level of self-awareness inside with what's going on in your inner world, then you can become more aware of your outer world. And then you can start to recognize more clearly, that actually doesn't make me feel good. That is actually not okay for me. And then you can start to practice very slowly speaking up. And we do this through speaking up with ourselves first. And what I mean by that, speaking up to yourself, you have to hear yourself. You have to hear your own whispers of your own heart first. And you can only do that when the mind is quiet. So in order to speak up, we actually have to hear first. Otherwise, we don't know what we're talking about. So we have to hear first, have this level of self-understanding through the self-inquiry. And when we can hear the whispers of our heart, we can then feel as well. We can feel how we really feel. Oh no, that situation made me feel really anxious. I actually didn't like the way that person spoke to me. That wasn't okay, what happened there. Or actually, you know what? I feel uncomfortable about how I reacted to that situation. Perhaps I should apologize. You can start to become more aware of your inner world because you started to calm down your mind and you can hear the whispers of your heart. You can feel the feelings that are associated with everything that is going on all the time, rather than disassociating, checking out, numbing, and distracting yourself, which is what's happening most of the time. When all of your attention is directed outward, you lose contact or you lose connection with this inner world, which is this inner situation which is always occurring. But if you disassociate from that, you distract yourself, you numb with, things like technology, alcohol, anything that distracts yourself, your phone, social media. If you spend too much time doing that, you lose connection with your inner world. Then of course you're not going to be able to have firm boundaries about what's okay in your outer world, because you're not even having boundaries with yourself. You're not even setting your own boundaries by saying no to your own desires. And so saying no to others starts with hearing ourselves and then saying no to ourselves, to the mind's wanderings. So when the mind wants to pick up the phone again and compulsively look at the phone, that's when you have to practice your own internal boundary. No, that's enough. That's not going to help me come back to the present moment. There's a level of discipline in that, self-discipline. And this is what we're practicing in the meditation, because every time you notice the mind wander, you bring the mind back to the present moment, into the breath, and you're cultivating this level of discipline to say no to your mind. You're saying no to the mind wandering into the past and into the future, making up all these stories. And every time you do that, you are strengthening your own internal boundaries. You're actually creating safety for yourself by learning to say no to yourself, by saying no to your mind, because otherwise your mind will just run everywhere, completely unbounded. And that's when you feel anxious and you feel unsafe and you don't feel certain and your life is not going the way you want it to go. So there's a lot in this, external boundaries, internal boundaries. But please know that every time you sit to meditate, you are helping yourself with this. You are firming up your internal boundaries because you're creating a level of discipline with yourself every time you take the meditation seat. There's a discipline in doing the meditation. And if you're doing it every day, you are really strengthening this muscle awareness and, of this discipline, these boundaries inside. It's not a discipline where you get disciplined. It's not a mean thing. It's actually to help yourself stay safe and feel contained and in control. If you can say yes and no to yourself, you will be more effective in saying yes and no to other things and people in your outer world. If you have trouble saying no to your own desires, saying no to things that you know won't help you, like overeating, for example, or eating too much junk food, or eating all that chocolate, or drinking too much alcohol, or spending too much time on social media, or binging Netflix, or anything that when you're doing it, probably shouldn't be doing this, probably won't make me feel that good. But you hear the voice, but you don't listen. And you don't have the discipline to say no to yourself. You just allow your own mind's desire in that moment to have whatever it wants. And this is the same as when you're on the meditation cushion and the mind wants to wander into the past or future, and you let it. You notice it, but you just allow it to go into its story. You don't catch it and bring it back. And this is why the meditation practice is transforming you from the inside out. Because every time you catch the mind and you bring it back to the present moment, you're saying no to it. You're saying, no, we're going to stay here in the present moment. We're going to stay here with the breath. You're developing this level of self-control. You're developing this inner discipline and saying no to yourself. And so that way, when things occur in your outside world that don't feel good, or that you want to communicate one of your needs, it's much easier for you to do this because you've practiced it with yourself. But if you can't say no to yourself, it's going to be very hard to say no to others. So we're going to go ahead now and we're going to practice this in meditation. And the way we're going to do that today is by setting up the posture as normal. So you can go ahead and do that. And when we say setting up the posture, we start with our 7 points of the posture. So noticing the feet and the knees. If you're sitting in a chair, that means that your feet are flat on the floor. If you're sitting cross-legged on a meditation cushion or on cushions on the floor, on the lounge or on your bed, just ensure that you have enough elevation under your seat. So you might need at least 1 or 2 cushions to make sure that your hips are higher than your knees. Hips are higher than your knees. So your knees will be pointing down on this sort of downward angle. And this is the same if you're sitting in a chair. You want to ensure that and you might need an extra cushion, or if you can adjust the height of the chair, then that's great. But you want to ensure that your hips are higher than your knees, no matter where you're sitting. You can place your hands flat on the tops of your thighs, palms facing down. And this position is said to be very calming and grounding for the mind, maintaining this contact during the meditation. You can roll your shoulders back and down, broad across the collarbones, just getting your shoulders to sit back and down in their pockets. And your arms are tucked in, nice and comfortable. We want a nice, tall, straight spine here, as if somebody's pulling you up from the crown of the head. And your eyes are going to be looking slightly downwards, about 1 to 2 feet in front of you. We are going to be keeping the eyes open during this practice. And we do this to help ourselves to stay fully present and also to avoid any sleepiness or dullness that might happen if the eyes are completely closed. So you're looking 1 to 2 feet in front of you as if you're looking down the tip of your nose. So it's not that you necessarily need to tilt your head that far forward. You can just have the chin slightly tucked in and back, and you can just have the gaze slightly down. And although you're looking outward, your attention is actually inward. So we want to maintain a very soft gaze. Be very soft with the eyes. You're not staring at anything in particular. And just start to relax the face and the jaw. Just making sure you're not holding any tension in the face. You might like to part your lips just slightly. Have the tongue resting just behind the teeth on the roof of the mouth. And you may even like to have a slight smile, just a fraction. And you'll see how that actually relaxes you immediately. It's very hard to feel tense when you're smiling. And so now that you've got your meditation posture set up, you can go ahead and start taking a few deep breaths in through the nose, sighing it out through the mouth. Deep breath in through the nose, sighing it out through the mouth. Just letting any of the stresses of the day float away. There's nowhere else you need to be. Nothing else you need to do. Always right here. And just bring the awareness into the belly now. And allow yourself to ground down and connect to your body. Just notice the belly expanding and contracting as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Bringing the awareness into the body. Now that we've connected the body and the mind through the breath, let's start to even out the breath now. So just bringing your awareness up to the nose. And start to even out the inhalation and the exhalation. Breathing in and out of the nose. An even breath is an even mind. Now begin to count your exhalations. So you're going to start at 1, and each out breath you'll count 1, 2, 3, and go all the way up to 21. And from 21 back down again. And each time you notice yourself losing track of the counting, or the mind has begun to wander, just start again at 1. Counting the exhalations from 1 to 21 and back down again. We're doing this in a very relaxed way. Being very gentle with yourself. Just noticing where your attention is. And if it has wandered off the breath, Just gently bring it back as soon as you've noticed it and start again at 1. Breathing in and out of the nose. Having most of your attention on this process of breathing. Most of your attention is being focused on the inhalation and the exhalation, in and out of the nose. At least 70% of your attention is going to be directed to this process. And the other 30% of your attention, you are still going to be noticing the felt sense of your body, any sounds, how you're feeling. But the majority of our attention is being directed onto the breath. And if the mind begins to wander, you've lost track of the counting. As soon as you notice it's wandered off, bring the mind back and start again at 1. We're doing this with no judgment. The idea is not to judge ourselves or get to 21. The object of the meditation is to continue to notice where your attention is and bring it back to the breath. Continue to follow the breath. The rising breath as it comes in, the falling breath as it goes out. We're not trying to stop the mind or block it in any way. We're just simply noticing and bringing the mind back onto the breath. And after some time, you'll notice that the mind begins to calm down. Continuing in this way now. Continuing to count each exhalation. And if the mind has wandered off or gets distracted, just bring it back and start again. And don't worry about how many times you have to do this. Each time you bring the mind back, there's a learning curve. You're learning to stay in the present moment. And the mind will start to calm down. Just a few more breaths like this. You can start to take a deeper breath, dropping the counting. Just a longer inhalation and a longer exhalation. And just resting your attention now in this open, pervasive awareness space. And we'll close today's practice with a dedication. You can bring the hands to the heart center. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May all beings experience love, compassion, and equanimity. May all beings be free, happy, and joyful. Thank you so much for joining me today in today's class. If you have your journal handy, just go ahead and grab that now. And just spend a minute here just reflecting on your practice today. Just noting specifically one good thing about today's practice, and also one challenge. You can do this very briefly. It doesn't have to be particularly long. This is just a moment of reflection. Just noting this down in your journal. You can always come back to this space of writing, of journaling at any time during your day. I highly encourage this practice. Just reflecting on your inner world, on your inner experience. And just finishing up where you are. And your homework for this week is to practice your inner boundaries. Practice your inner boundaries by practicing saying no to your own mind, saying no to your own desires. And we do this through being mindful. So if you haven't been practicing your mindful teeth brushing or mindful showering, go back and pick up that practice and start doing that each day. And when you notice the mind wandering, when you are brushing your teeth, for example, you're going to just become aware that that has happened. And you're practicing this inner boundary of not engaging with the thoughts. You're not engaging with the stories. You bring your mind back to brushing your teeth. And this is how I want you to practice this week. You're saying no to those mind-wandering thoughts, to this old mental habit of allowing the mind to wander off wherever it wants to go. Instead, you are developing a level of discipline and boundaries with yourself, and you're cultivating this level of awareness every time you notice, and this discipline of bringing the mind back. And this is how you develop these inner boundaries. And this is how your outer boundaries become firmer, because you keep practicing your inner boundaries of being mindful in the present moment. So you can do this with your mindful teeth brushing and mindful showering, not allowing the mind to wander off, just noticing it and bringing it back to the present moment, firming up those inner boundaries. If you want to, you can always take this a step further by practicing saying no to things that you know don't serve you, like too much screen time, too much social media engagement, time spent on your phone, time spent with technology in general. You know, you can roll this out into all the areas in your life that I covered earlier that you probably know don't serve you. However, it can feel very limiting if you are saying no to yourself all the time. So that's why we're going to start with the mindfulness exercises, and you're just going to start very slowly. And what you'll find is that after some time, it becomes easier then to say no to these other things, and you don't feel so limited. In fact, you realize you're actually doing yourself a favor. You're doing yourself a solid, and you are actually cultivating a better connection with yourself, and you're cultivating better connections with others because you've said no to those things that don't really serve you. But this is a journey and a process, so we just start very slowly. So we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed today's class, and I really look forward to seeing you next time.